Jim Rogers, good morning. How you been doing, sir? So nice to have you back.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. Good morning to you. I will have to say to you that the Indian stock market has been the most surprising to me this year. We've done a very good job.
Well, I mean, I would love to say that we are the best, but if I look at what's the global equity setup, Nasdaq is also up, S&P has also participated. So yes, Indian markets are at an all-time high, but other major markets also are at a 52-week high.
Well, you just said it. Your markets are making new highs. That's very impressive to me. I would not have expected it. I would have expected that Japan would be strong this year, which is a bit of a surprise to many people, but India is the biggest surprise to me. Well done.
Why were you surprised and why were you not expecting that Indian markets will make a new high?
Well, most markets around the world have been strong, as you know, and when you're that strong, usually something happens to cause the markets to go down. I would expect the American markets to go down later this year, but anyway, I'm just surprised that India's been this strong. I did not know your economy was so strong, and I certainly did not expect your market to be so strong. Congratulations. Well done.
Jim, what do you make of the recent uptick which is coming back in commodities? Crude prices are up, rice prices at an all-time high. If I look at other basic commodities also, I mean, I don't know how closely you track it, but I can tell you that tomato prices in India, they've gone from about a dollar to about $3.50. Is inflation threatening to make a comeback, especially in agri commodity in the second half of this year?
Well, agriculture's been a disaster for a long time. We've discussed this before. So we're going to run out of farmers soon unless something happens. And the thing that always happens throughout history is prices go up, people become interested in agriculture again, and that's what's happening. Supply and demand get out of balance, but it's worse now because we don't even have enough farmers around the world.
So, in this mismatch that we're seeing in agri commodities right now, Jim, what's the place to bet on within agri?
Well, as I look around the world, the cheapest asset class is commodities right now. I mean, sugar's way down from its historic highs. Silver's down over 50% from its all-time high. Those are certainly not bubble numbers, and commodities are the cheapest asset class. As I said, even the Indian stock market is making all-time highs. So nothing's cheap except commodities.
So, Jim, at a time like this, what's your portfolio strategy? Where is it that you have exposure? Is it India? Is it some of the other emerging markets? Safe haven assets like gold and silver?
Well, I never use the word safe when I talk about investing. I have learned over the decades that nothing is safe. Uh, but India has, again, to repeat, has done a good job. I would say the Japanese stock market has still got a long way to go. The Japanese stock market is still down 25 or 30% from its all-time high, which is pretty remarkable. Chinese market is down a lot, so that may be a place to invest. But most stock markets have done extremely well in the last year, so there are not any bargains except maybe Japan, maybe China.
Jim, why has China surprisingly disappointed everybody? At the beginning of the year, the consensus view was go back to China. They are coming out of that COVID unlocking phase. Chinese demand will make a comeback, and if Chinese demand will make a comeback, commodities will also make a comeback. That view, I think, has got seriously challenged.
Well, China had a huge asset bubble, and always, no matter what the market, when you have a big asset bubble, and the Chinese bubble lasted several years, when you have a long bubble that pops, it usually takes a long time for it to recover. That seems to be what's happening in China now, because the bubble was gigantic. Beijing claimed that they, or said that they were trying to do something about it for several years. Somebody finally did something, but the results are going to take a long time to clear up because the bubble was so huge. America had a big bubble like this, in the 20s, and it led to the 1929 stock market collapse.
So what happens next now, Jim? I mean, the world in which you've invested in, it was about high debt is bad news. And if you have a high debt on your balance sheet, the future will look bleak. As a financial commentator, what I have reported and what I've learned from gurus like you is that countries when they expand their balance sheet, they will have to pay for it in future. But that theory, I think, is getting completely debunked when I look at US.
You have certainly learned a lot, haven't you? You've learned your lessons well. The biggest asset class in the U.S. has been technology. That has certainly been a bubble. If you look at the American stock market, it's up, but it's really only 7 or 8 stocks that are up, and they're technology stocks. They have gone up every day, and that usually leads to big problems eventually. I'm not selling short in the U.S., not yet anyway. I'm not selling short anywhere. But I can certainly see the technology bubble in the U.S. is getting bigger and bigger every week.
Jim, what makes you so bullish on the Japanese economy, though? Because inflation is a persistent problem there as well, and it continues at a higher rate than the national target that they have.
You're very perceptive. The thing that makes me bullish on Japan, the stock market, is the fact that the Japanese stock market went down by many percent, by over 50, went down 70%, 80%. It is still far below its all-time high. Its all-time high was nearly 35 years ago. So that's a long time. And now the Chinese central bank is buying ETFs. The Japanese central bank has more money than I do. And if they're going to buy equity or stock ETFs, I want to invest in Japan.
So if somebody has to look at the world the Jim Rogers way, what is your if somebody has to really understand the world the Jim Rogers way, what to your mind is the most overvalued asset class? What to your mind is the most undervalued asset class? And if Jim Rogers had to make one trade for next 5 years, only one trade, and then you are allowed to go to Miami or come to India for a nice vacation, which will be that trade?
Well, I guess that trade would be silver. Silver is so cheap on a historic basis, and inflation is not over yet. So I guess if I had to make one trade, it would be silver. The most overvalued asset class is probably U.S. technology stocks, because they're becoming absurd. I am not selling them as short yet because I expect them to get more absurd. The most undervalued asset class, probably agricultural commodities, maybe the Chinese stock market, probably agricultural commodities.
Okay, good to have you on board, Jim. Thanks much for joining in and sharing with us your outlook in terms of your portfolio allocation. Go ahead, go ahead.
I've got some silver here to show you I'm not just talking.
Okay, so you're staying true to your word. You practice what you preach, and there is your silver coin. Thanks so much, Jim,
Thank you.
for joining in. Okay, silver.